With JoJo Part 5 finally being announced, there's no more fitting time to welcome you to this set for the very first set of the V format. So this is it. We've been going over content for V-BT01 for quite a while now, as I've slowly shifted into putting more priority on the Japanese releases rather than English as I used to, because I think it's more fitting with the way that I've shaped my channel these days. But regardless, we still have a lot to go over. There's some cards that I've never touched up on in the actual videos that I've made so far, like deck previews and whatnot, so I think it's still worth to go over everything one more time and explain everything in greater depth. This is also the set that I've playtested by far the most from any other set in recent times, because even in the past there would be one or two clans that I'm interested in from a set. I'd playtest them all the time and then just like experience the rest of the clans by just playing against them, whereas here I've been playing every clan a lot, and I plan to keep doing that for every single set that comes out now for the V series, to keep pushing out content for you folks as well. But without any further ado, let's go over the set. We're going to begin with the sort of box toppers slash exclusive stuff. So first thing to note is that when you buy a box of V-BT01, you get one of each imaginary gift marker in the box. So you'll get these basic markers for Force, Axle, and Protect, but you also get, for every 4 packs that you buy, so if you buy a box you get 4 of these, you get a pack of promos, and these contain both a gift marker as well as the promo of that character that's on the gift marker. So we're going to go over them in order. First we'll have the one in the Aichi pack, so you have the Force with Aichi's design on it, as well as the promo, which is Snowgull. Snowgull's skill being, when the attack it boosted hits a Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1 to return it to your hand. The slight big disadvantage of this is that it's only 7k, therefore it's a lower power than most other grade 1s in the clan, and Soul is a really precious resource in Royals right now, so I don't think this card will be all that good for the time being. Snowgull is a high beast, however, which does make it work with Akane being able to hit for bigger numbers, but regardless, it's not really all that amazing. Next up is the Kai Force marker that comes together with Grape Shot Wyvern, which has a skill that when it's placed on rearguard circle, if your opponent's rearguard was retired during this turn, one of your units gets plus 3k power until end of turn. Again, it's not all that amazing because you can turn something from a 10k to a 13k attacker, so for example you can hit the Force numbers or any grade 3 for that matter, but apart from that it's a one-time skill that you won't be able to use ever again after calling him, so I think it's again not all that amazing. Next up is the Misaki Protect marker that does come with Onmyoji of the Moonlit Knight, which is a grade 2 with a skill that when it's placed on rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1 and discard a card, and you put a card on the bottom of your deck into your hand. Now, at first, people didn't think this was all that good, but there have been some lists, such as in the WGPs in Japan, that have been topping with Onmyoji in them with a 2 or 3 count, so I think the card has seen some more play over time, because in the end, the Soul Blast is alright, is the discard that people sometimes have a problem with, but even then, as long as you're not Soul Blasting a grade 3, the only real other things you're going to be using it that much on is going to be stuff like Lockbird, which we will be taking a look at later in this video, but I think overall this card is quite solid because you can safely put things on the bottom of your deck with your skills and then be able to still get them into your hand. And finally, for Nova Grappler, we do have the Kamui Axle marker, which comes together with Extra Muscular, which is a grade 2 with the rearguard skill. When it stands, this unit gets plus 3k until end of turn. Now, in Standard, this card isn't all that great right now because there's not that many units that can stand your units multiple times the way that we could in Premium with Victor, where we could spam restand one unit. So maybe in Premium this would see some play, but right now in Standard there's just not that many ways to consistently stand the same unit over and over and over again in one turn. Therefore I think maybe in the future this will see some play, so I think it's still worth picking up a few copies of, but right now I don't think it's all that great. So that is actually it for the promotional material, so now let's get into the actual set. The one last thing we need to quickly go over before we get into the actual cards is the signed markers. These come 2 per case, aka 1 per 10 boxes that you open, and they are the following. So we have 1 for Aichi and 1 for Kai, being the 2 Force ones, and these are, I think Aichi's is the second cheapest and Kai's is also not super expensive. They're like 30-40ish, I think. And then there's one for Kamui, and then obviously one for Misaki. And the Kamui one is the cheapest, I think, at like 25 or 30. It's really, really cheap. And then the Misaki one is by far the most expensive because of the waifu factor, going for around 60. So these are really rare. They're not really necessary unless you want to bling out your deck, but they are very, very sexy. Getting into the clans, however, don't forget that we are going to be going over just the V-BT01 reveals. If you want to see the cards from the 2 trial decks, you can check out my set breakdown I did a few weeks ago. For those of you that are new to the format, I basically go over all the cards for the clans and the sets and go over what's good, what's bad, why what's good, why what's bad, etc. and, you know, just sort of analyze them as we go. I also do them in my own personal preference, with my least favorite clan going first and my most favorite clan going last. A lot of the people that watch me for a good amount of time tend to know which order I tend to do things in. So we're going to be starting off with Kagero, and our first card of which is going to be Dragonic Waterfall, which comes both in the VR as well as the SVR rarities, but they are the same skill, just a slight difference in the art. Dragonic Waterfall is a 13k base grade 3 with the Force marker and has 2 skills. First one of which is, when placed on the Vanguard circle, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rearguards and retire it. This is a really good skill because you do it for free. The only problem is if your opponent doesn't call a grade 2 or higher rearguard, you know, it doesn't matter where they call it, but as long as they don't call anything, then you know you can't retire anything. Or if you're playing as Orgo Think Tank and they have a Promise Daughter, you also can't retire that. So in that sense, it's a little bit restrictive, so you won't always get it off, especially if you're going first and you miss right into this, then there's a chance your opponent hasn't called any grade 2s yet whatsoever, and then it might become a bit of a problem. His second skill, however, is when it attacks on the Vanguard circle, you Soul Blast a grade 3 specifically, and until the end of that battle, this unit gets plus 10k power, plus 1 critical, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels to Guardian Circle from hand. Therefore, this is really threatening because this wants to be ridden second. You want to ride some other grade 3 like Dragonic Overlord first, and then go into your Waterfall, and then you're able to get that second skill off, which gets you an extra crit, pushes you up to 23k power, 33 or more if you're using Force and putting it on your Vanguard circle, and on top of that, you force your opponent to guard with something that is not Sentinels. So this also counts for Protect markers in Orgo Think Tank, or well, any Protect clan really. So it's going to be forcing them to call just grade 0, so if you can pump it up really hard, this is going to be really threatening. And so it's important to be able to consistently do this skill, so it's fine to ride Waterfall over Waterfall over Waterfall, because you get that extra retire and you get his skill certainly off as well, because you keep having a grade 3 in your soul to be able to Soul Blast, and that way you're able to push for damage as well as for this really oppressive pressure of the guard restrict as well. So I think this card is overall really good. It's just that it really kind of it relies on you having multiple copies or having ridden a grade 3 beforehand, which is sort of its weak point. Moving along, we are going to be doing this in rarity. In the past I would break things up into archetypes, but because everything is sort of generic and there's no real archetype this time, we're just going to go over everything as it comes. The only other rarity, which isn't really a new card but more of a reprint, is the Origin rare, and for Kagero this is Dragonic Overlord, so the skill is the exact same as the one in the trial deck, it's just that the art is the same one as the old Overlord in the classical series. But now going over to a new card actually is going to be Berserk Dragon, which used to be a trial deck card in the past but has now become a triple rare with 10k power as a grade 2 and both Vanguard and Rearguard skill. When placed on any of those circles, Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it, and if this unit is on your Vanguard circle, draw a card. Now, because of the general rulings of Vanguard, even if you ride this unit and you pay the cost but there's no rearguard to retire, you can still draw a card, because in Vanguard you do as much as possible of that skill. Even if you can't do some part, you can still do everything else that is possible, so even if you can't retire, you can still draw the card. So this makes it really good. It's the only card in Kagero that straight up draws you an additional card, which is really nice, and therefore it's really important to ride him on your turn too, because that way even if you don't get the retire, you get the draw, which is a +1. If you do get the retire, it's a +2, which is also really good. Sometimes, if your only grade 3 in your hand is Waterfall and you really don't want to ride it first, you might even want to ride another Berserk Dragon to not go to grade 3 just yet, just because you can get that extra draw, and by then your opponent might have even called something, so you can still balance out your negation by losing that extra drive check from the grade 3, by still maintaining your opponent's board in a way, and also maintaining your own hand. So that way, Berserk is a really good card. It's a 4 of, in my opinion, in every Kagero deck right now, and so it's really nice. The second skill is when it attacks a Vanguard on Rearguard circle. If you have more Rearguards than your opponent, this unit gets plus 3000 power until the end of that battle. So it's a 13k attacker when you have more Rearguards. It's pretty simple, but it's quite effective because it can hit Force things on its own. It can hit every other clan in terms of like their grade 3 just on its own without any boost, so it's honestly really nice for that sole reason. Moving along, we have another triple rare, which is Flame of Hope Ermo. He has a continuous rearguard skill. During the battle that it boosted, this unit gets plus 3000 power, so it kind of does the same thing as the Gojo in the trial deck, where it's an 11k booster, but it also has a second skill on top of that, and one that is very strong. When your opponent's rearguard is retired during your turn, retire this unit, draw a card, and countercharge once. So this is technically the other card that also draws you one, but because you also retire him, it balances out like the -1 to +1, whereas with Berserk Dragon you just gain just a +1 in that regard. But the important part of Ermo is that it countercharges 1 in a clan that really counterblasts a lot. So this card is also 4 of because of that countercharge skill. If you don't know yet, countercharge is the ability to flip one of your face down damages back face up so you can use it for another skill later on. So it's really important to have this because it's the only countercharger in Kagero, which makes it very, very strong. Next we have Cruel Dragon, which is another grade 3 with a force marker. In your hand he has a continuous skill. During your turn, which your opponent's rearguard was retired, this card can be normal called to your rearguard circle even if your Vanguard is grade 2 or less. Now pay attention to the fact that it says normal call. This means that you will not be able to do it in the battle phase if you retire your opponent's rearguard during the battle phase, but if you're able to retire something in the main phase like with Nahalem or Bar, etc., then you'll be able to call the Cruel Dragon from your hand, meaning that even if you're in grade 1 or grade 2, you're able to have a 13k attacker, and it has another skill, which is on rearguard circle, when its attack hits a Vanguard, you can return him to your hand and soul charge 1. This is quite nice because the soul charge is random, but if you get a grade 3, that means that your waterfall is going to go live earlier, and that overall makes it more efficient for you in your general game plan. Therefore, some players have been putting in 1 or 2 Cruel Dragons in their decks, and I think the card itself is fine as a budget option because you can still ride it if you have to, and still get the force marker. You're just not going to get its other 2 skills, which revolve around the rearguard circle. Next is a threatening grade 1 that is Dragonic Gaius. On rearguard circle, when it boosts a grade 3 or greater unit, you can counterblast 1 and put this unit into your soul, and the boosted unit gets an extra critical until the end of that battle. Again, you can also use this with Cruel Dragon, for example, who already has some pressure on the rearguard circle to give him an extra crit. But you can also use it with Dragonic Overlord himself, who normally is, you know, on the Vanguard circle, but he also has the rearguard skill where you can Soul Blast 1 to give him plus 10k power, meaning you can make him a 23k attacker, and then with Dragonic Gaius you can give him an extra crit, which means that he's going to be pressuring your opponent to either take that and lose 2 damage, or have to guard with at least 15k shield, which, you know, they might have let through if it didn't have that crit. So I think it's very important to, you know, if you're going for less crits in your deck build, like if you're running 8 or 6 draws, then it's good to have Dragonic Gaius to still have that crit pressure on the sides, and therefore it's quite nice. And this is also good because he can also boost a Vanguard grade 3, it doesn't have to be the rearguard that's grade 3, so overall Dragonic Gaius is quite a good card, but you wouldn't play too many of him because he's not super universal the way that things like Bar and Ermo are. Next up is a card that every single clan gets, which is the Draw Trigger Perfect Guard, or as one of the lovely people in the comments suggested, calling them Perfect Draws, which I actually like how it sounds, so let's call them Perfect Draws for now. So, the one for Kagero is Wyvern Guard Bari, so it is both a draw trigger, so it's a grade 0, but it's also the Sentinel, meaning that it's a perfect guard. So if you don't know what perfect guards are, they're units that when you guard with them, they technically have 0 shield, but if you discard a card from your hand, it basically nullifies any damage that would be done, therefore perfectly guarding you from that attack essentially. However, every clan gets this, so all the other ones that we're going to go over is going to be a lot faster than this, and I might even skip out on some of them in future sets if I feel that it's not so important because every clan gets the same one. Moving into the rares, we have Vortex Dragon. He does not have the force marker despite being a grade 3, but he has 2 interesting skills, first one of which is an act once per turn. You counterblast 2, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it, and if you have 5 cards in your damage zone, discard all cards from your hand and retire all of your opponent's rearguards. It's an interesting skill because if you're really behind and you ride him and then you basically don't have anything in your hand, then you could potentially use a skill to just wipe out your opponent's field, but if you're already on 5 damage and no cards in hand, chances are you're pretty close to losing, and unless your opponent is in the same situation as you are, then it's not really going to amount to much. I do like it for its second skill though, which is when your opponent's rearguard is retired during your turn, he gets plus 5k. I think that skill is alright because it works on rearguard circle, and so every time you retire he gets pumped up by 5, meaning that he can hit for magic numbers easily, and that makes him kind of okay, but if he had the force marker it'd be a bit better. Next is Prowling Dragon Striken. It's a grade 2 with 10k power with a Vanguard skill that he cannot attack, so only a Vanguard circle, but if you call him, it's fine to attack with him. But he has the second skill that when rode upon by a grade 3, you counterblast 1 to draw a card, and one of your Vanguards gets plus 5k power and plus 1 crit until end of turn. So there's another unit that does draw, but the reason why I stress so much that Berserk Dragon draws is because he can still attack, therefore you're not losing something from losing that drive check, whereas you know, with this, the draw compensates not having the drive check on turn 2. So again, it's not really the raw plus that you're getting from Berserk Dragon with Striken. But it's sort of interesting because if you ride the Overlord, you could potentially give him the crit to really like force your opponent to guard that attack or take it and, you know, potentially lose. And, you know, combined with a Dragonic Gaius or something, you can really like hit them for like 3 crit without actually checking any triggers. So it's kind of interesting in that regard, but I don't think the card is going to see that much play for now at least, because the grade 3s right now just don't really work in that manner to really profit off of Striken, and losing the drive check on turn 2 is a bit more heavy than that. Next is Bellicosity Dragon that has the same skill as Vortex's second skill, so when your opponent's rearguard is retired during your turn, he gets plus 5k until end of turn. So it does stack on both Vanguard and rearguard circle. Some players have been putting him in. I think he's an overall alright card because he does pump up by increments of 5, so he hits for 15, 20, etc. So it doesn't hit for magic numbers per se on his own, but with, you know, an 8k booster or 7k booster against Protect and Axel, he does. So I think some people have been playing him, and I think it's a fine choice, but I think right now you have other grade 2s that you can be playing instead that are better. However, the variant of this card in grade 1, which is Lizard Soldier Ropia, is much better. So it has the exact same skill, but it's 8k, meaning that it'll hit for magic numbers no matter what, but as a booster, which makes it really good because no matter what it's boosting, it'll be hitting for a nice solid magic number, and you can just leave these in the back row and keep powering up your columns like this, and that makes it very threatening. So I think this card is very solid. Next, moving into the commons, we have Spillover Dragon, which in my opinion is the best common for Kagero. So it's a grade 2 that has a skill. On rearguard circle, at the end of the battle that it attacks the Vanguard while boosted, you counterblast 1 and put him into your soul. Choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rearguards and retire it. What's good is that it's at the end of the battle, so you get to attack with him if he's boosted, and after that battle, so after your opponent guards and everything, you pay the cost, slide him into the soul, which is also really good because that soul charge is going to come in handy with some of the skills like Dragonic Overlord, and then you also get to retire one of your opponent's rearguards, and this triggers in the battle phase, meaning that Airmo will see it, and then Airmo will also trigger in the battle phase, leaving your field open in case you're fighting against the mirror match or something, and that way you're not going to be losing your Airmo that you put on the field, and you can use it immediately to countercharge the counterblast that you used for Spillover, and also get a unit off your opponent's board, and also get yourself an extra soul. So I think it's a really solid card. Next is Flame of Destruction Verpti. Vanguard and rearguard circle act, counterblast 2, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it, and this unit gets plus 3000 power until end of turn. I honestly don't think this is all that great because the plus 3k hits for 12, but it's a 9k in a forest clan where almost everything is a 10k grade 2, so I think that already discounts it, and the counterblast 2 is way too heavy I think for this clan, so that doesn't make it all that good. Next is Dominance Dragon. When it attacks a Vanguard, both on Vanguard and rearguard circle, if you have more rearguards than your opponent, this unit gets plus 5k until the end of that battle. I think this is actually not too bad. It's an 8k, meaning it's going to be hitting for 13 when it attacks, and so that hits for magic numbers against basically everything, and so I think if the grade 1 choices for Kagero weren't already so good, this could potentially see some play, and I think even in some Japanese lists they have been putting him in just because he can hit for nice numbers early on, so I think he's actually not that bad and shouldn't be looked over, but I think the grade 1 space is already quite tight for Kagero, and so I'm not sure if he really makes the cut. Next is Instigate Griffin. Vanguard and rearguard circle act, once per turn counterblast 1, and one of your Flame Dragon gets plus 5k until end of turn. I currently think that we don't have that many Flame Dragons in the clan to really be able to justify this. You can give it to like Bellicosity or like Vortex, I guess, or like Cruel Dragon or Berserk Dragon, but you know, Waterfall is a tier dragon which kind of takes away from it, but Overlord you could give the power to, but I think like if we had more Flame Dragons maybe a bit better. but right now it's just not really all that great. Next, we have Great Bombing of Hellfire Gabija. Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When it attacks the Vanguard, if your opponent's Rearguard was retired during this turn, she gets plus 10k until that battle. Not too bad, but she's a 7k base, meaning that 17k, it'll hit against Axel and Protect as a magic number, but it's not really going to do much against the Force matchups. But I think as we go on into the game, like when AL4 releases, there'll be more clans with 12k base grade 3s than there are with 13k. Like there'll be 5 Force clans and, if I'm not mistaken, 9 Axel and Protect clans in combination. So I think maybe over time this will become better, but right now it's not looking all that great. Finally is a grade 0, which is Flight Lock. He has an act skill on Rearguard Circle. You put him into your soul to choose one of your opponent's grade 0 rearguards and retire it. This, you know, if it was a trigger, it'd be pretty good, like we had in the past, but I don't think it's all that important anymore because there's no Forerunners with the new starters. They all stay in the soul, really, for now at least. You know, I'm not going to jinx the future, but it would have been better if we had Forerunners. Right now, people don't really call grade 0s unless they're Nova Grappler and they call their draw triggers to the Axel Circle, but I don't think you should be playing this just because of that, so I don't think it's overall that good. And that sums it up for the Kagero segment. So I think Kagero is really strong, honestly. Like I mentioned in my deck preview, which I recommend you check out, it's kind of too reliant on pieces. Like you need a lot of stuff at once. You need a card that buffs up from being from your units retiring, but you also need a unit that retires. You know, with Waterfall, he's really good, but you need to ride him after another grade 3. So you need to have a different grade 3 before that. But, you know, with cards like Berserk, you can sort of help that consistency shape up. But I think it's overall kind of tricky, but I think really good Kagero players are able to play Kagero to its fullest really well as well. So I think it's overall not the biggest issue. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at our beloved main characters, Clan Royal Paladin. I was going to put this at second first, but after playing with Royals a lot, I started to like them a bit less. And there's only one card in this clan that was the reason why I was debating on building Royals, which we'll get to eventually. The VR/SVR of the set is King of Knights Alfred, which is honestly a really good card. He has a Force marker and he's 13k base power. He has an act once per turn, counterblast 1, and search your deck for up to 1 Blaster Blade specifically. Just the Blaster Blade card, no like Blaster Blade Spirit, you know, none of the other Blaster Blade variants, but just the Blaster Blade grade 2 that we all are familiar with. And then you call it to Rearguard Circle, that unit gets plus 5k until end of turn, and you shuffle your deck. So you make your Blaster Blade a 15k attacker for 1 counterblast, and you get an extra unit from your deck. You're thinning your deck, so you have a higher chance of drawing triggers, and overall it's a good skill, even though you're not going to be using that Blaster Blade, probably because you want to save the counterblast and the soul, but it's still good because you get a good unit, a good attacker every turn essentially, so I do like it for that. And on top of that, he has a continuous skill. During your turn, if you have a Blaster Blade on your Rearguard Circle, this unit gets plus 10k power. So you don't even need to put a Force marker on him when you ride him. You can put it on your Rearguard Circle where you don't call the Blaster Blade, and then the Blaster Blade will get the 5, and then he's going to get the 10 from his second skill, and then whatever you call in the other one will get the 10 from the Force marker. So that way, it's really easy to advance throughout the turns, and this is a really good first ride target. You stay on him for 1 or 2 turns as you build up your field, you call out your Blaster Blades, thinning your deck, and then you're able to go for the finisher, which is Soul Saver Dragon. So this is a triple rare. Her first skill is an act, and also I do mention she does have Force, but her first skill is an act, Vanguard Circle, Soul Blast 5, and 6 of your units get plus 15,000 power until end of turn. Important to note that, you know, you have to select separate units for the 15k power. Some people I've seen had the misconception that you could select more, like one unit with more than one stack, but you have to distribute a 15k to each unit you have, and they can't receive more than 15k. But regardless, this is really, really good because you build up the soul quite easily with some of the cards we're going to look at, you know, throughout this segment, and then that way you're able to ride into this, get your Force, so that's another 10k, and then distribute 15k to everything, including her, because you choose 5 of your rearguards plus your Vanguard, equaling 6 units, so basically every column is buffed up by 30k, and it's the perfect finisher. But you do want to hold off until your opponent's on at least 4 or 5 damage, because otherwise this won't really amount to all that much if, you know, you haven't pressured your opponent enough early on. Second skill is, in case you miss right into it and you don't see your Alfred beforehand, is when it attacks, you may soul charge 1, only on Vanguard Circle. But this is good because even if you can't get the Alfred before her and you have to ride her first and you can't use her first skill yet, you can still attack with her to get the extra soul charge, so maybe next turn you can already use her skills. So I think it's overall a good combination of skills, and she's a very strong unit. And now we're going into the unit that made me really tempted to build the clan, which is High Dog Breeder Akane. I really love her art. She's always been a unit that I've loved the art of, but I think her reboot art looks even better, honestly. But her first skill is, on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, when placed, cast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Pongal specifically, call it to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. Really cool because you can ride her to cast 1 and call a Pongal, so you get yourself an extra unit, you thin your deck, and you trigger Pongal skill, which we'll go over later. And then her second skill is, on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle once again, during the battle that it was boosted by a High Beast, this unit gets plus 3k power. So I'm going to mention every High Beast that we go over from now on, so you can tell which ones interact with her. As I mentioned at the start, the promo Snowgirl also interacts with her, so together they make a 20k attack, but obviously that's not really hitting for too much against any of the clans. So it's alright, but both skills are really good, but I'm going to explain why the second skill is really good with a particular unit a bit later on. Next is Conjurer of Mithril, which is a 9k grade 2 that's a double rare. When placed from your hand, so you can't call it from your deck, it has to be from your hand, you cast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 card, specifically, call it to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. This card, at first, I was testing it from the very get-go because it was like, oh, a card that lets me search Akane, which searches Pongal. Isn't that better because I thin my deck faster? And then I realized that losing that Counterblast and Soul is actually quite heavy, especially the Soul because, you know, you're putting yourself further from your win con that is Soul Saver, and the clan currently has no ways to countercharge, and so losing that counterblast can also be quite heavy because you'd rather use it on something like Alfred that's not only going to call you a unit, but it's also going to buff it up as well and buff himself up too. So I think he's alright. I know that some people will definitely still keep playing him, but I just think that he takes away a little bit from the current win con, but maybe in the future he's going to get better, so I think it's still worth to pick him up if you find him for cheap. Next is a really good double rare that is Little Sage Marin. On Rearguard Circle once per turn, when your other rearguard is placed in the same column as this unit, cast 1 to draw a card and he gets plus 3 cancel on a turn. This is really good because he's an 11k attacker, which, you know, with a 12k attacker, for example, will be hitting for magic numbers against everything. But it's that skill of drawing the extra card that's really, really nice, because you're gonna be calling things in the same column anyway to attack with something, so being able to counterblast to convert that into a draw and a power pump is really nice, so this is definitely a 4 of in Royals right now. Next is the perfect draw for Royals, which is Flash Shield Isolt, or Isolde if you prefer. And then we have another grade 2 that is Funolgal. When attacks of Vanguard while boosted on Rearguard Circle, you can cast 1 to Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets plus 5000 power until end of that battle. I think it's overall not too bad because you convert a Counterblast into a Soul, which is good for your win con, you know, you can really rush into it, but losing that Counterblast is a little bit heavy because again, you don't have any countercharge outside of healing, but that plus 5k can be quite handy, especially in the early game to rush your opponent so that you can deliver your Soul Saver finish even faster. Next is Knight of Rose Morgana, which was heavily overlooked at the very start of the set's release. She has a rearguard skill as a grade 1. When she attacks Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, and she gets plus 3k until end of that battle for each grade of your Vanguard. So if it's grade 3, you get plus 9k, grade 2 plus 6k, grade 1 plus 3k. So why is she good? I explained this in the deck preview if you already watched it, but to repeat, the plus 9k turns into a 17, which, guess what, hits for a magical number against Protect and Axel. So hitting 17 against 12 is going to ask them for at least 10k shield. However, if you boost it with a Marin for 11k, you're going to be hitting for 28, which is a magic number against everything, which is really, really strong for just a Soul Blast, which, you know, you can use, for example, as I did in my deck preview, you can go into your Soul Saver, use Soul Saver's skill to lose all your soul, and then just attack with Soul Saver first to get that last soul that you need for Morgana, and then attack with Morgana to Soul Blast 1 and get the power and hit for magic numbers. So I think Morgana is really, really good and overall a very underestimated unit. Next is the aforementioned Pongal. When placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have another unit in the same column as this unit, you Soul Charge 1. If the card that was Soul Charged is a trigger unit, he gets plus 5k until end of turn. So really nice because it helps you with your Soul Saver win con, you just get an extra soul, and if you happen to Soul Charge a trigger, which is obviously a tragedy, you still get something in exchange, which is that extra 5k power. So I think this card is really good. Obviously a 4 of because you need to call it with your Akane. It's an 8k booster, so with Akane it's going to be hitting for 21, which isn't really a magical number, but we're still going to get into a high beast that can hit for the magical number. I also should have mentioned that the grade 2 Funelgal is also a high beast, but it doesn't work with Akane because obviously it cannot boost as a grade 2. Moving along, we do have Gigantic Charger, which is a grade 3 without the force marker. When this unit or your other Vanguard is placed, this unit gets plus 10k power until end of turn, so both on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, kind of possibly playable, maybe as a 1 or a 2 of, but honestly you're better off playing Alfred early or getting Soul Savers while they're cheap, because this card is honestly not all that great. The extra power is nice because you can hit for magic numbers, but risking not getting the force the way Morikawa did in episode 5 I think is honestly not really optimal in the current game. So I think overall this card is a little bit underwhelming. I did test it at first because I expected more of it, but honestly it was quite disappointing. Next is Knight of Devotion Bergius. On Rearguard Circle, continuous. If your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets plus 3k power. This works on both turns, so this will be a 13k on your opponent's turn as long as your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, which is a permanent state. So honestly this isn't too bad, I think, because being 13k means that your opponent's gonna have a harder time to get rid of it. I just think the grade 2 space right now is a bit too tight to justify this, but maybe it's like a 2 or 3 of you could possibly put it in. Next is Herculean Knight Alabrox. He's a 9k grade 2, but he has a skill continuous on Rearguard Circle. If you have 5 rearguards, this unit cannot be attacked. So, you know, that doesn't change the fact that if you have a different unit on the other Rearguard Circle, that one can be attacked, that negates the skill. But if you play 2 of them in the front rows, then neither of them can be attacked, which is kind of interesting, forcing your opponent to really go all in on your Vanguard, and that way you can focus your guarding as well. So I wouldn't necessarily discount him. He's just a bit harder to make good columns with, so I'm not sure if he's super good in that regard. Next is Radical Knight Anil. Continuous Rearguard Circle during the battle that attack the Vanguard, this unit gets plus 3k power, so 11k attacker. So some people have been playing him because in early game he can hit for some nice numbers, and then even if you put him to the back, he's still an 8k booster regardless. So I think I see why, and I did try him at first when I was looking for ways to fill my grade 1 space, but I think now after discovering how good Morgana is, I have cut him, so I'm not sure if it's really that important. Next is Mirubiru, which is a high beast, but 7k power and has the Rearguard skill. If it's in the same column as your Vanguard, gets plus 5k permanently, so is a 12k permanently, but with the high beast you won't be able to use it with Akane unless you ride her, and that way I don't think it's all that good. However, a high beast that is 7k power that is really good is Lion Mane Stallion. On Rearguard Circle, if you have 4 or more rearguards, he gets plus 3k, meaning he's a 10k booster / attacker. Now, because he's a high beast combined with Akane, this is going to be hitting for 23k, which is a magic number for any clan, so really good and honestly worth playing in my opinion, even as a 2 of. And finally we have Jiro, who is a high beast but is a grade 0 with 5k power. And on Rearguard Circle and Guardian Circle, this unit cannot be chosen due to your opponent's card effect nor attack. I think this might want to say chosen by your opponent's effects, because it's a little bit weird to put do in there, but you know, whatever, let's not question it too much. So it's an interesting skill, but apart from that, I think you don't really have the space in terms of grade 1s to play this little dude. Final 2 special rarities. First one is the Origin Rare, which is the Blaster Blade with the old artwork, but then Royals did get the one and only Imaginary Rare or IMR in this set, which is also the Blaster Blade drawn by Ito Sensei together with the signature, which is honestly a really nice sign, and the artwork for me also looks good. I like the Vanguard circle in the back behind him that you can kind of see, so I think honestly it looks really good. And you know, there's only one per case with 1 per 20 boxes, so it's quite hard to get, but I think it's still a very nice art. But that does wrap it up for Royals. I think it's overall a very consistent clan right now. It can generate advantage quite easily, it can generate pressure quite easily, it has a very clear win condition that's quite easy to achieve with the cards in the clan, so I think it's overall very strong. My only kind of issue with it is that it gets a bit linear because the combos you're doing tend to be the same every game more or less. But apart from that, I think it is quite strong. Once it gets a countercharger, eventually it's going to be even better. So for now, you have to be really careful with the way you counterblast and use up your resources in the clan. Moving along, however, to our second last clan, we do have Oracle Think Tank. So we're going to be beginning with the VR/SVR, which is Imperial Daughter. So this is a Protect clan, this time going away from Force, and Protect does basically add a Perfect Guard to your hand. And Imperial Daughter's first skill is, keep in mind that she is a 12k base grade 3, which is different from the Force Clans. Her skill is when you ride her, Counterblast 1, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one card from among them into your hand and the other one either on top of your deck or into your soul. And if you rode from a grade 3, she also gets a 15k buff as well as an extra critical until end of turn. So this does reward you for riding a different grade 3 first, or riding her on top of herself the way that Misaki did in the anime. That way you get an extra skill, but even the first skill, if you do ride into her first, is definitely nice, because you get yourself an extra card in hand, and you can potentially stack a trigger on top of your deck, or get yourself an extra soul, such as a grade 3, which will, you know, help you out in the long term, as we'll see later on throughout this segment. Her second skill is quite simple, act once per turn, Soul Blast 1, and one of your units gets plus 6k until end of turn, which is a very good skill because you can bump up some of your attackers from like 12 to 18, hitting for anything, or, you know, bumping up some of your grade 2s from 9 to 15, etc. So I think it's overall a very flexible and good skill, so even if you ride her first, there's a lot of stuff you can do with her, and that makes her very good. Arguably the best VR in the set, honestly. The next grade 3 that you might want to be riding first, which is also available in not only triple rare but also in origin rare, is CEO Amaterasu, or Amaterasu if you wish me to pronounce it that way. But her first skill is an act. Once per turn, Counterblast 1, draw a card, look at the top card of your deck, and put it in the top or bottom of your deck. So even if you ride her, you can first call out some units that might profit from you looking at the top of the deck, and then use her skill to get yourself an extra card and also determine your fate, essentially. It's a really good skill because for Counterblast 1 you're doing quite a lot in terms of standard, so I think it is definitely quite nice. Her second skill is Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When you look at your deck due to effects during your turn, this unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. So it activates for look, reveal, and search effects. Plus 5k each time you look regardless of number of cards, which circumvents the premium combo with Globe Mega, so you cannot get infinite power on her, don't worry. This is only once per each time you look per skill, so do keep that in mind. But even then it's really good because you can pump her up quite easily with some of the other cards that we'll see in this set, therefore making her a fearsome attacker and having a good skill on the Vanguard Circle too. Up next we do have people's good friend Mr. Tim Tam Silent Tom. He is a grade 2 with 9k power, as all the Protect and Axel grade 2s are 9k power, well most of them at least. But his skill is Vanguard and Rearguard Circle when placed, Counterblast 1, and this unit gets plus 6k power until end of turn, making him a 15k attacker, which is good, but that Counterblast does eat away at his viability, honestly, in standard at least. Second skill is, during the battle that it attacked a Vanguard specifically, your opponent cannot call normal units to Guardian Circle from hand, meaning that it's gonna be grade 0s only. In Premium, paired up with Ichikishima, who restricts your grade 0s as well as your G-Guardians, you basically can't guard against them except for intercepting, which makes it really scary. But in Standard, honestly, Silent Tom is good, but I don't think he's super amazing because you're mostly guarding with triggers anyway because they have 15k, 20k, etc. shield, or, you know, perfect guard in the case of draw triggers. And that first skill is good for the plus 6k, but you really can't afford the Counterblast that easily in the standard version of Oracle Think Tank right now, so I don't think Silent Tom is all that important right now. Then we have Circle Magus, who's a grade 1 with 8k power, who is really good. She has a Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill. When your drive check reveals a grade 2 or greater card, you may put that card on the bottom of your deck, if you do draw a card. So this is really good for filtering your deck. So it's like you don't want a grade 2 or a grade 3, just slide it on the bottom, enjoy yourself another card, and it might be something that you actually wanted. And then her second skill helps you just be more consistent in the early game, which is when you ride on top of her, you Counterblast 1 and draw a card. So you already draw an extra card from your starter skill, but now she also helps you draw another card, meaning that in the early game you're going to be able to go through quite a lot of cards, so in case you're getting grade stuck, you'll be able to see more cards early on, that way trying to not be grade stuck essentially. So I think it's definitely a very good card. Then we have Victorious Deer, which is the win condition for Oracle Think Tank right now. Has an Act, Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill, and also holds the Protect marker, by the way. Once per turn, Soul Blast 2 grade 3s and discard a card from your hand. So this is why we want to Soul Charge grade 3s together with Imperial Daughter. But then you look at 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 2 critical triggers, that icon does mean critical, from among them, put the revealed cards on the top of your deck in any order, and shuffle the rest of the cards looked at, put them on the bottom of your deck, and 6 of your units get plus 10k until end of turn. Important to note that only those cards that you saw, so from the 7, if you get 2 crits, then the remaining 5 will be shuffled and put on the bottom, not the rest of your deck will be shuffled. Keep that in mind, because making that mistake might give you a loss or a penalty in a tournament. So you only shuffle those remaining cards, not the rest of your deck, so it's really important to keep that in mind. But this basically certifies you to more or less always have 2 or at least like 1 crit, sometimes 0 obviously, but gives you a very solid chance of having crits at the top of your deck as well as buffing up your entire field. And it's really easy to do this because you either ride the grade 2 twice and then call Victorious Deer, or you get yourself an extra soul charge grade 3 from Imperial Daughter to be able to use Victorious Deer even earlier. So you play this at around 2 copies per deck, but it's still really good because it is your win condition and it's really hard to come back from this or guard this series of attacks properly without having just 3 perfect guards in hand. Moving along, we have the really good grade 2 in Promised Daughter. She has the Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill. During the battle that it attacked the Vanguard specifically, if the number of cards in your hand is 4 or more, she gets plus 6k power. So 15k attacker, basically when you have 4 or more cards in hand. Good because with an 8k boost, that's going to be hitting for 23, meaning that it's a magic number against everything. 7k boost, it hits 22, meaning it's a magical number against Protect and Axel, so it's still very nice. Second skill is really good against Kagero, Rearguard and Guardian Circle skill. This unit cannot be retired due to your opponent's card effect. It can be chosen though. So your opponent's effects can choose it, but you know, they can't like retire it, which is what Kagero mainly wants to do. So this negates Waterfall that we looked at earlier, this negates Blaster Blade, this negates basically everything that would retire because it's just really, really nice. So very good card, honestly one of the best. She's really cute too, so super nice. Next up we have Oracle Think Tank's Perfect Draw, which is Weather Forecaster Mist. Moving along, we have Yellow Witch Meme, who is technically a witch for those premium players, but her skill is when placed on a rearguard circle, look at the top card of your deck and put it on top or bottom of your deck. So this triggers Amaterasu's ability to gain 5k, so therefore you can place a Meme to give her an extra 5k, and if you were to use the Amaterasu's skill, that's going to be already at 10. But there's still more cards that can help us with that, so I think Meme is quite good just for that sole purpose. Next we have probably my favorite art in the set, which is Goddess of Insight Sotori Hime. Rearguard circle, when it attacks a Vanguard, counterblast 1 to draw a card and discard a card from your hand. So you just filter, you don't really gain advantage just filtering, but then she gains plus 6k until end of the turn, and if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can still look at the top card of your deck and leave it on the top or bottom. So again, triggers Amaterasu's ability, but also the filtering is really nice because you can ditch your useless cards to get something else. It's also good that you draw first before ditching, so if you draw something useless, you can still ditch it, so it's really nice. And she attacks for 15, which is very nice, with a soul restriction that it is on Vanguard only. Next, we have Oracle Guardian Gemini. Very simple skill, act on rearguard circle. If you have 3 or more cards in your damage zone, put it into your soul to countercharge 1. Good because you get an extra soul and you get the countercharge, which I think are 2 important things. Only restriction is 3 or more cards in your damage zone, so at some points this will be a dead card, so you won't really run 4, I think. 3 is a good number, some people even run 2, because the deck goes through you go through your whole deck really fast because of how much you draw and filter, so you can still play like 2 and get away with it, because when you need it you can probably just draw into it because you go through the deck that fast. So I think overall Gemini is a good card. Next we have Farfai Magus, or Magus rather. Same skill as Meme, when placed look at the top card of your deck and leave it on top or bottom. So again, just there to trigger CEO Amaterasu and also help you set up your plays. Next we have a rare perfect card that is a grade 1, Rotte Magus. So this is a normal perfect card with 7k power. This is like the ones that you got in the trial decks for Royal Paladin Kagero, but with OTT it is a rare, which still makes it really easy to get. So if you can't afford the draw trigger perfect cards, then you might as well get these ones. Next we have Battle Maiden Sarasa. Has Vanguard and Rearguard skill. When it attacks the Vanguard, look at the top card of your deck, leave it on top or bottom, and if you put it on the bottom, get 6k power. So hits for 18, which is a magic number against everything, but does lack the protect marker, unfortunately. I've seen some Japanese lists running her at like 1 of, just because, again, you go through the deck that fast that you can justify it, and if you soul charge her with Imperial Daughter, then that's even better because you reach your Victorious Deer even earlier. But even then, her skill is nice because she doesn't cost a counterblast to do what she does, and she also attacks for 18, which is a magic number. So, but you do have to leave it on the bottom of the deck. But if you value that power more than whatever you saw, you are going to leave it on the bottom, so I think it's quite nice. Next is Resolute Maiden Chitose. Has Act, Vanguard, and Rearguard Circle once per turn. You have to discard a Sentinel, so this is either a Perfect Guard or your Protect marker, to draw a card and get plus 10k power. It's kind of interesting, but I don't think it's all that good because you don't generate Protect markers that fast, because they only generate when you ride your grade 3 unit. So even if you call your Protect grade 3s, you won't get a Protect marker. Don't think of it that way. So I think it's not all that great, because losing the Sentinel can sometimes prove to be a bit more dangerous than you would think. Next is Weather Girl Saft. Rearguard skill once per turn. When you draw a card, you Soul Blast 1 and she gets plus 6k until end of turn. Does not activate for Drive Check nor Put skills. I always find the word Put in skills so funny when it just separated like that. But pretty simple skill, 15k attacker if you drew a card this turn, but you do have to Soul Blast. So again, I've seen some lists I think that ran her at 1 or 2, but I don't think she's all that good in comparison to every other grade 2 in the clan, especially when you have some really good ones like Sotori Hime and Promised Daughter. Then there's Solid Turtle. When placed on Rearguard Circle, Soul Blast 1 to draw a card and discard a card. So kind of does the same as Sotori Hime, just for a Soul Blast and doesn't get the power, and it's on placement, so it's not in battle phase. So I think Sotori Hime does the job better in this case, but it could still see some niche use, I think. Next is Goddess of Tide of Times Mizuno Hame. On Rearguard Circle, when it boosts the Vanguard, if you have 3 or more cards in your damage zone, she gets plus 6k, which is 14k booster is actually quite solid, because with a 12k Vanguard, it's going to be hitting for 26, which is honestly not too bad. With Imperial Daughter, you can bump that up to a 32, and suddenly you're hitting magical numbers against Protect and Axel. So I think this isn't too bad. It doesn't cost Counter Blast. She's still an 8k base power regardless, so I think I've seen people run her, and I think it's for a justified reason. Next, there's Petal Fairy. Act Rearguard Circle, you can slide her into the soul to look at the top card of your deck, put on top or bottom, and if you put on the bottom, she gives one of your units plus 5k. There is a little bit of a mistake in the skill though, as the power symbol should go next to the 5 rather than one of your attack units gets 5k. That's a bit weird. So yeah, not sure. I'm pretty sure that's a mistake. I want to say it is, because that looks kind of weird for now, but the skill is okay, but again, I don't think it's all that good, because it is in the main phase. They have to look at the top or bottom, and it's sort of like the grade 3, except that one's in battle phase, which makes it better in my opinion. So with this one, you're just kind of losing a unit, and you're not really drawing anything to make up for it. It's just the extra soul that might help. Next, we have the grade 1 vanilla shooting hobby. So he's quite passionate about his hobbies here, but it's a 7k vanilla, but it's a 15k shield. So that's how Protect clans do their grade 1 vanillas. They're higher shield power, but less attacking power. Then we have Luckbird, a card that you want to be running at least 2 of. When placed on Rearguard Circle, Soul Blast 2 to draw a card, and he gets plus 6k until the end of turn. Or I guess she, because it looks like a mother, honestly, with all those little chickens. So the card is good. You convert your non-grade 3 soul into an extra card, and it's an 11k booster, which makes it good with any 12k attacker, really. Then you get 2 types of starters. One is Whiteness Rabbit, one is Lozenge Magus. They both do the same thing, but I think if you're a so-called man of culture, or woman of culture, while we're at it, you probably want to run Lozenge Magus, but I know people run Whiteness Rabbit too, but honestly, Lozenge's art by Hagia is just so good. And then the rest of the stuff is just triggers. So you get 2 types of crits in Nike and Psychic Bird. You get your draw, which is Miracle Kid, but you already had another draw with the Perfect Guard, and then the heal, which is Sphere Magus. And you know, we already went over triggers in the last set breakdown, how they've changed, so there's not much else to go over here. So that wraps it up for Oracle Think Tank. In my opinion, it's the best clan in the set because it has a very clear win con. It's very fast in the way that you go through your deck, has a lot of ways of applying pressure, has a really strong matchup against Kagero, which would normally be a scary matchup for it, has ways to countercharge, has ways to draw cards, has ways to get more soul. It's really well rounded, and overall I think it's the best clan for a reason from this set, and just with such a good win con like Victorious Deer that for some reason has a protect marker, it's honestly no big wonder why it is the best. This video is starting to get a bit lengthier than I had predicted, but now we're gonna go over my favorite clan from this set, which is Nova Grappler. I honestly think Nova's got some really strong support and paved the way for Axel clans in the future, so this will be our first Axel clan, which gets you an extra rearguard circle when you ride a grade 3 with a marker on it. But our first card is gonna be Perfect Riser, which in my opinion is a really strong grade 3. He does have the Axel marker as a 12k base grade 3, and his first skill is on Vanguard Circle. When it attacks any unit, whether it's Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, counterblast 2 and stand 2 of your rearguards in the front row. The Axel circles also count as your front row, so you can also stand them, because they do have an extra 10k power, which is pretty good, and that way you're converting each counterblast into another attack, which makes it really strong. Your opponent can actually counterplay this by not giving you the 2 counterblasts at the start, but you still have other options to go into in case that happens. Second skill is, however, when its attack hits while it's on the Vanguard Circle, if you have a card with Riser in its card name in your soul, countercharge 1, and one of your units gets plus 5000 power until end of turn. A really good skill because it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to guard this guy, because even if you hit a rear guard, you're able to get the counter charge and the extra 5k, which can be the defining factor of some games, so I think both skills pair up to make it a really awesome unit. Next we have Ashura Kaiser as our triple rare, who is also available as an origin rare, who does hold the Axel marker as well, and has the skill that when your drive check reveals a grade 2 or greater card, you stand one of your rearguards, and if the revealed card is grade 3 or greater, you counterblast 1 and that rearguard gets plus 10k until end of turn. With this wording we can see that they're future proofing, potentially putting grade 4s into the game as it says grade 3 or greater, but it always has, so I think that's just my little nitpick. But this card is honestly better than I initially thought, because it lets you do something when your opponent damage denies you and still like withstand rearguards. So if you get a grade 0, it's usually a trigger. If you get a grade 1, that's 10k shield, so it's not something to really complain about too much. But if it's a grade 2, you get to stand something, and if it's a grade 3, you stand something and potentially pay counterblast 1 to give it 10k power, which, if you check 2 grade 3s, technically does more than Perfect Riser because it stands 2 and buffs them up, so in that regard I think it's quite good. I think it would have been cool if they would have added Hero to its race, but I think it doesn't really make sense. But, you know, with the way that Miwa used the deck, it would have been nice. But I think it's a good card. I initially didn't like it compared to Perfect Riser. I felt like they clashed, but I think now there's a reason to run both because it's just a good card to go into when your opponent doesn't give you that second damage, as it's still a pretty good card, and once you've thinned your deck enough, I think it's also overall quite a consistent choice. Moving right along, we're gonna get into one of the best grade 2s for the clan, which is High Powered Riser Custom. His first skill is when you call him or ride him, you may call a Battle Riser from your soul to a rearguard in the same column as him. So it has to be the same column, but you don't have to. Let's say you ride him, but you don't want to lose the unit. You can choose not to use it, and then when you call him later on, you can choose to use that skill then. But then his second skill interacts with that, where when his attack hits a Vanguard, regardless if he's on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you counterblast 1 and put that Battle Riser from your Rearguard Circle into your soul to stand one of your other rearguards. So against Kagero, this is kind of shaky, because you might lose, you know, a very important unit to this combo, but it's still a very high pressure combo, and this is the only card in the clan that gives you advantage. The only card that gives you a straight up +1 on your field. So it's kind of ridiculous that that's how it is, but honestly this is a really good card and definitely a 4 of in the clan in my opinion. Next is Riser Custom. I should also mention that both the grade 2 and the grade 1 are drawn by Daisuke Izuka. His skill, first one is not that good, it's an act once per turn. You put a card from your hand into your soul, and then he can attack even on your first turn, but he loses the drive check. So you get a card in your soul, but you lose a card in your hand just to give your opponent 1 damage to do combos with. So honestly, I don't think it's all that good, apart from if you're really gonna go ham and rush them as fast as possible. His second skill is the really good one though, where on Rearguard Circle once per turn, when your other rearguard in the same column as this unit stands, you may stand this unit. So if you use something like Perfect Riser to stand the front row units and he's in the back, then you can obviously stand him as well, so you have a full fresh attack with the boost included. So I think this card is really good. I see it as a 4 of, but I've seen some people cut it down to even 1. I think it's a bit questionable, but honestly I really like him, but I'll keep testing and see what the perfect number for him is. Next is the perfect draw for Nova Grappler, which is Twin Blader, followed by a really good backup grade 3 that is only a rare, that is Battle Door Fighter. So this does have the hero race, which sort of opens up a little archetype within Nova Grappler. His first skill is an act once per turn, Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1, choose one of your units, and for that battle that unit attacked during this turn, while your opponent calls guardians from his or her hand, they must call 2 or more at the same time. So this actually goes over the basic rules in which you can only call guardians one at a time. So here you actually get to essentially force your opponent to drop 2 guardians at once, and if you put this on the card that we're going to go over pretty soon, you can actually get the skill off twice. You can also give the skill to the Vanguard, like to himself, which makes it quite scary, you know, to guard the Vanguard attack, so I think it's definitely pretty nice in that regard. So I think this skill is really threatening, and it can be quite scary and can easily finish off games as well. Because even if they guard with a perfect guard, they'll still have to put something else on top of that, so it's going to be forcing them to lose 3 cards in hand essentially. His second skill is both Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, if you have 3 or more Rearguards, he gets +5 cancel out of that battle, so 17k attacker pretty consistently. I think that condition is quite easy to fulfill, and above all else he does have the Axel marker, which makes him very nice. However, the grade 3 that doesn't have an Axel marker is Miss Splendor, which is our hero grade 3 together with Battledore. Has a Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill. When your hero attacks, until the end of that battle, your opponent cannot intercept, and if you have more rearguards than your opponent, the unit that attack gets +3k. That skill is not once per turn, and even if it's the same unit attacking, it's not once per turn either. So it has to be a hero. So we're going to go over which ones get it, so it's like Miss Splendor will get it, Battledore Fighter will get it, but that +3k, for example, if you restand the hero with Perfect Riser, they'll get the 3k again, which means that a 12k can gain 6, hitting for 18 magic numbers, hello, so it's definitely very nice, and I think some people have been putting in this card into their decks, and I think I can see why, because I haven't tested it myself yet, but just from looking at some games, I can definitely see that this is a really good grade 3 that you don't want to run too many of, because you obviously don't want to write it. It's best on your rearguard circle, possibly even Axel circle, but for that very simple reason, this does help build up numbers, and sometimes that intercept block will come in handy too. Moving on to the card that interacts super well with Battledore, that is Burst Riser. When your Vanguard attacks, you Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to stand him, and if your opponent has 4 more cards in their damage zone, he also gets a +3k buff. So you give Battledore Fighter's skill to him, and then he will attack on his own, you know, to ask for 2 guardians from your opponent, and then when your Vanguard attacks you can restand him, and he's still gonna have the skill from Battledore to be able to ask for 2 shields, so that's really nice. And then once again, when that Burst Riser attacks for the second time, it's also gonna ask for 2 shields. But even then, for example, with Perfect Riser, you restand 2 units, but then if you have Burst Riser somewhere as well, you can use the skill to stand him as well, meaning you'll get 3 units restood. Obviously, it's going to cost a lot to your Counter Blast and Soul Blast, but I think this is a really good card. Some people are cutting it because it's just like they prefer the numbers from other units instead of the extra stand, but I think if you're going super aggressive, I think it's definitely worth to play Burst Riser. Moving along, we have the best resource management for the clan in Boomerang Thrower. He has 2 skills, one of which is when called, if you have 1 or less face-up cards in your damage zone, countercharge 1. Second skill is, once again, when called, if you have 1 or less cards in your soul, soul charge 1. Obviously, if you call him and you meet both of the criteria, then you get both the counter charge and the soul charge. I think this skill is really nice because you do use your soul a lot and you use your counter blast a lot. I think it makes the card pretty good because that way you get both of them at once. He's also a hero, so he works together with all your other hero cards. So honestly, I think he's quite nice. I know some people don't play him because they're better at resource management than I am, but I personally do like him a lot, and I feel like he's a good safety net, and him being a hero definitely makes it very nice, and the art is also pretty baller. Next is the rare perfect art for Nova Grappler, which is Hate Reflector. So this is the card that you show to all your haters. And once again, it is the very nice budget option in case you can't get the draw perfect arts. Followed by which is Maximum Riser. I kept calling this one Trans Riser in my commentary video. He does not have the Axel marker, unfortunately, but he does still have a good skill on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When he attacks a Vanguard while not boosted, he gets plus 10k until the end of that battle. Actually, at one point when I was streaming, and I was playing Novas, I think I either rode him, I think I had to ride him in one game when I was testing him, and then I boosted it, and then I realized, oh wait, I could have just not boosted and would have had more power, so do keep that in mind. But this is a really good thing to call in your Axel circle, because then you're going to have a 32k attacker, but you can even call him on something else, then call something else on the actual Axel circle. because then that will attack for around 20 and he'll also be attacking for 22, so it's obviously better to have more of the same amount but higher power units than one that's really strong and the rest are kind of eh. Next we have Iron Killer, which is a grade 2 that a lot of people are really putting in play a lot. His skill is on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When he attacks a Vanguard, if you have 3 or more Rearguards, he gets plus 5k until the end of that battle. Really good because 14k attacker no matter what, you call him to Axial Circle, he hits everything for 24. Overall, a very good unit in my opinion, and honestly I can see why he's being played so much. I personally started with 2, I might bump him up a little bit more, I might put it down to less, I'm really not sure, but I do acknowledge that he's a really good card. Next is Cup Bowler, which is our hero grade 2. During your turn on Vanguard and Rearguard Circles, if you have another hero, he gets plus 5k power. So another hero can be your Vanguard, can be your Rearguard, can be anything. As long as you have another hero race unit on your field, he will get that extra 5k, making him a 14k attacker, which is really nice. Next is the grade 1 vanilla for Nova Grappler, that is Death Army Guy. So here we see no shield power but 9k base power, which is really good defensively because none of the grade 1s that a non-Axial clan would throw at you, if you're going first, will be hitting this unless they boost it, so it forces them to overcommit, which is really cool. Or they can just damage deny you, which is also the sad part of this card. But overall, I like the way that they distinguish the grade 1 vanillas for the 3 types of clans, so I definitely welcome this change. Next is Trance Riser, which is an 8k grade 1. When it boosts, you can Soul Blast 2 in order to countercharge 1, and if that attack targets a Vanguard, he also gets plus 3k until the end of that battle. So some people, if they play Trance Riser, they drop the Boomerang Thrower because that way you can convert the soul you don't need into the countercharge. I think in that case you don't play the Burst Riser and you play the Hero Engine because you don't need the soul that much if you don't play Burst Riser. So I think it's interesting how you can change up your deck build quite a lot to still be able to get similar results, but with a very different approach to how you attack and your power distributions as well. So I think this is one of the cards that kind of plays into that whole interaction, I guess you could call it. So it's definitely a good card. The Soul Blast 2 is a little bit steep sometimes, like if you are playing Burst Riser, so I think it depends how you build your deck, honestly. So I think I'm going to make some changes to the deck that I made in my preview, and then see how I can make things a bit better. Next up is our grade 1 hero Rocket Hammerman. When it boosts a hero, you can Soul Blast 1 and he gets plus 5k until end of turn. So really nice 13k booster for just a Soul Blast. So again, if you don't play Burst Riser, you can definitely afford that Soul Blast a lot easier. So I think it's looking like the Hero Engine is going to be the better thing than running like pure Risers. So I think it's interesting how the one clan is developing through the weeks in Japan, and we'll see what kind of developments we have in the West as well. But obviously this is a good yet simple grade 1. And the last grade 1 is Jet Riser. Both on Vanguard and Rearguard skills, when your other Rearguard is placed, this unit gets plus 3k until end of turn. What you normally want to do is call this guy first and then fill up your field to pump him up by 3 or 6 or 9 or even 12. So definitely very nice because you can put him on Axial Circle and then he'll attack for a lot despite just being a grade 1. So I think that part of him is really cool, and I definitely want to run him as a 4 because I think he's arguably one of the best grade 1s in the clan. Then Nova Grappler got 2 types of starters in Tap the Hyper and Battle Riser. Obviously Battle Riser is really important for High Power Riser custom, so you know, it also helps to have him in the soul for Perfect Riser's second skill, so I think it's better to play the Battle Riser unless you're playing pure heroes, in which case Tap the Hyper might be more to your choice. And finally we have Cat Butler making a return with a slightly different skill this time, and I think of all the grade 0s that have been pushed into the clans that aren't starters, this is the only one that you really want to play. So he only has 10k shield unfortunately, but Rearguard Circle, at the end of the battle that your Vanguard's attack did not hit, you can Soul Blast 1 and retire him, then choose one of your units. It gets plus 3k until end of turn, and if that unit is a grade 2 or less Vanguard, you stand it. It's a bit of a shame that this skill wasn't just grade 2 or less, because that way you could be on grade 3 with your Vanguard and not hit, and then still pay the cost to stand one of your grade 2s or something. That way, like a grade 2 Rearguard or something, so that way it would be quite nice, I think. And so I think the skill is still quite nice because you can try to rush them really early and then with a grade 2 force them to guard it if you've already pushed them to 4 damage or something. But I think that early they can keep themselves at bay and see that you're kind of planning to rush them really hard with Cat Butler. So I think it's an interesting card. A lot of people were asking me to try it out and I still have yet to try it, but I do plan to because I think it's a pretty interesting card. So I think of all the grade 0s that they put in that aren't starters, this one is the best. And finally, the triggers. We have the 2 criticals. I really love Red Lightning's new art. It's so nice. I wish this was the old Red Lightning art, because then I could play it in Victor at least. Then we have the one other draw that is 3 minutes, as well as the 2 front triggers, which are the new type of trigger that only Axel clans get, which give an extra 10k power to your entire front row, including your Axel circles. So these are Cannonball and Turbo Riser. And finally you have your heal trigger, that is Wallboy. So that wraps it up for Nova Grappler, which in my opinion got some really solid support. I think it's a really strong clan, honestly. I think the power to turn anything into a combo piece with Perfect Riser and Axel Circles is really nice. Like, you can call draw triggers down and attack with them for 15k on the Axel Circle and then restand them if you need to. So it's like, no matter how bad your hand is, as long as you have like Perfect Riser or something, you can make something out of anything, and that's what I really like about Novas right now. And overall, I'm a really big fan of Axel clans in general, so like I'm tempted by Tachkaz, I'm tempted by Aquaforce, I'm really excited for Pale Moon actually, so I think honestly this like difference in clan mechanics is very interesting, and I think some people will start to grow a preference for one kind over the other. But that's gonna wrap it up for this set breakdown. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think, what you're building from this set. If you wanna, build a budget deck, I have a video for that you can check out for every single clan, all in one video. And then if you want to build a more competitive deck, I featured all of them in this set in their own videos if you want to give that a look, so you can, get some kind of assistance if you do need it. Otherwise, I will still have a box opening coming up for this set as well that you can look forward to, so I hope that you do enjoy that as well. But on that note, don't forget to hit the bell button as well as check out the social medias in the description and join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But on that note, that's going to be it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.